Hey everybody, it's Thursday morning and I just want to do a quick update here on my native tank. Just saw a few of the crayfish out and about and I wanted to get a little bit of video of them. You can see one of the smaller ones right here. That one's not really big, but I do have a few of the smaller ones that are still out and about and fairly easy to spot. And here's what I really wanted to show you. See how the carapace is split right between the back of the body and where the tail starts? That is where the shell separates when a crayfish sloughs. It sort of splits open right there, and then the crayfish sort of wiggles his way backwards out of it. You can also see the Mayan Cichlid in there working on it, eating it. Just to the left of where the tail is, that little tiny cave, a moment ago I saw a little tiny crayfish sticking its head out of there, and it too looked like it was working on the tail. So I'm going to leave that in the tank. That's actually good food. It'll provide a lot of calcium. The crayfish that sloughed will not be able to eat it, being a soft shell. They're too soft to actually tear a solid shell apart, but the other fish and the other crayfish in the tank will definitely eat the remains of that shell. Otherwise, everything looks pretty good. I'm still seeing a little bit of damage to the smallmouth bass in there, but not a lot. Although now that I'm looking, I just realized I've got my flash on, so if you see any glare or reflection or whatever, that's what's going on. This sunfish now actually is looking really rough. Look how torn up its tail looks, and it's got white marks on its side, so I'm now back to being a little concerned. I thought we had gotten on top of the bacterial infection that I had in this tank, but I'm not so sure now. So we'll talk about that later. Again, this was just going to be a little brief morning update. I wanted to show you that crayfish that had sloughed and show you that I am seeing a few others out and about. And then that's about it. So I need to get my day started. I got a lot to do today. Hopefully we'll be able to get back in here this afternoon and we'll do a little more video about this tank. I do want to talk about what happened, and I definitely want to talk about how we're going to move forward from here and what direction I want to take this tank, etc. So there's a little bit of crayfish drama for you. I swear these crayfish are just the most interesting animals in this tank. And that is one other thing I will add. I know yesterday I'd mentioned in a video that I am keeping this a native tank. I'm not going to switch it up or change it or do anything else. That may be a possibility in the distant future, but at least for the next season, over the winter and into next summer, this is going to remain a native tank. And one of the inhabitants that I can say is going to remain in there is going to be crayfish. Now that will seriously limit my options and possibilities in the future. It'll dramatically limit any sort of bottom-dwelling fish like the little mad tom catfish we have around here, the sculpins, the darters, anything like that that sort of lives and dwells on the bottom is not going to do well in a tank that has crayfish in it. And as I said, since this tank is going to have crayfish in it, that really puts a limit on what I can get away with keeping in this tank. So I've got lots to think about. Wow, I've never seen that before. That Mayan Cichlid apparently attacks and eats crayfish too, and it's going to get this one apparently. It's chasing it around, and now the smallmouth bass is getting in on the action. Not even sure where that crayfish went. There it is. So, like I've said over and over again now, this Mayan Cichlid is becoming really problematic in this tank, and I really need to get rid of him. The only problem is this infection I'm dealing with. I don't want to get rid of this fish until I know I'm giving someone a fish that's not going to be infected with a deadly bacteria that can wipe out their whole entire tank. So he'll have to come out of there. I'll have to do something about a quarantine tank. He's a bit big to put in a little 10-gallon, so I might have to set up some sort of tub. Again, I don't really know what I'm going to do yet, but until the time comes and I need to cross that bridge, I'm not going to worry too much about it. But that is something I'm going to need to consider, is how I'm going to treat this fish once I get it out of here to ensure that I'm not, giving someone else an infected fish. So there you go. There's your morning update on my native tank. A little bit of excitement, new developments. And of course we're going to need to be getting down to the stream again here pretty soon to get some more small minnows so that this Smallmouth bass has something to feed on, which opens me up to the possibility of bringing more infection back into the tank, etc., which again is, like I said, we're going to have to talk about that. That's going to be part of the direction I move forward in this tank. We're going to have to consider all that kind of stuff. So I will get my day started. We will try to get to talking about this stuff later. Look, you can actually see a claw right there. Look, he's picking it up. That's a claw. He just tore off that crayfish. So now we know why that one claw from the half-clawed crayfish, that half-broken claw, we know how that got detached and was lying in the bottom of the tank. So we also know that my feeding regimen of flakes and pellets and stuff is not nearly enough to satisfy the aggressive hunger of this Mayan Cichlid. I was wondering how it was growing so rapidly like that. I never realized it was just getting in there and just tearing these crayfish apart. So these Mayan cichlids apparently have teeth, because he's just biting chunks out of the back of the shell. I've never seen that before. When the sunfish or the bass attack a crayfish, they strike at it repeatedly and they wear it down and they tear its legs off and they just beat it up, and eventually they kill it, or they just gobble it up and eat it in one gulp. I've never seen a fish actually bite chunks out of the back of the shell of a crayfish before. So definitely about time to start getting this Mayan Cichlid here out of the tank. And I know this looks terrible and brutal, but that's, well, it is. That's just the way the world works with these kind of animals. And there's not a lot I can do about that. There's certainly no point in me getting in there and trying to rescue that crayfish or anything like that. And please keep in mind that the nervous system on these crayfish is less sophisticated than a cockroach. That crayfish in there that is being torn apart like that is not feeling any pain. I'm not saying it's having a good time, but it does not feel pain the way you and I associate pain. They simply do not have the nervous system for that kind of sensation. They just don't. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. So I'm not worried about that crayfish suffering in that sense. I know it's a bit brutal to watch, but again, it's the equivalent of stepping on a cockroach. If you're not too worried about, spraying a cockroach or a spider or something and seeing it curl up and die, then you shouldn't be too concerned about seeing this crayfish get destroyed like this. I know they have a lot of personality and everything, but ultimately they really are mud bugs. They really are just bugs that live in the streams and creeks and whatnot, so not a lot of harm done there. Anyway, that was a lot more excitement and aggression than I was expecting to get on video today, so there was your exciting Thursday update on the native tank here. And as I said, we'll shoot plenty of video about this tank in the coming days. I've got a lot of thinking to do, a lot of decisions to make, and I really need to start keeping my eye on this sunfish over here that has that mark on its back. So, alright everybody, make sure you're subscribed. Sorry about all that brutality if you were not expecting that first thing in the morning. I myself was not either. But as I said, I'm fully aware that that crayfish was not suffering in the way you and I would think of the term of suffering. And I don't think I'm going to have to worry about feeding this tank all that much later today. So again, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up on this or any of my other tanks. Don't forget, this one is my native tank. And I'll see you real soon in the next one. Thanks again.